Hello and welcome back to a very exciting section. Why is it exciting? Well, we finally get to code and we're going to start off by learning HTML and then finally building our very first website. In order for us to get started, we need to set up our environment, and we do that by, let's open up Google Chrome, and we're going to search for Sublime Text 3. This is a text editor that a lot of developers use. I myself have used it for years, absolutely love it. In your day-to-day job, you'll use something like this. I highly recommend Sublime Text. If you have a Mac, the version over here. If you have a PC running Windows, you'll have the download link for Windows. So for me, I'm going to download for the Mac. And you can see here it's downloaded, and I can drag it to my applications folder if I want. And we can double click. And if this is your first time downloading Sublime Text, you'll get something like this to give it permission to load. And there you go. We have Sublime Text. Now, what is a text editor? A text editor is a program that allows us to write code. You can see over here on the right-hand side of Sublime Text that it just says plain text. So I can type anything that I want, and there's nothing much different than if you wrote this in Word or a text file. But the power with a text editor, especially with something like Sublime that's geared towards coding, if you click on plain text here, you'll have a whole bunch of options of what type of code you're writing. So in our case, we're doing HTML. So if I click on HTML, nothing changes except for the bottom part over here. But now, if I type something, well, everything looks the same. But if I start typing HTML, it'll actually recognize it and help with syntax. So here now, if I write HTML, look at that. We get a nice little color completion. So for us, for now, we're going to be writing HTML. You can see over here that there's different options. There's, where is it? There's CSS, JavaScript, which we'll learn later. So we're going to be using Sublime Text for this. For now, click on HTML, and let's write our very first web page. In order for us to have a web page, we write HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So bear with me here. This is going to be new, but keep in mind that this is exactly what every single HTML page has. These are the set of rules that all HTML files must follow. And it goes like this. We define a doc type, and don't worry, I'll get into what that means in the next video. Ooh, I don't want caps here. Then we have HTML, and we close these tags, HTML. The second part, we have a head and a closing head. You can see over here some patterns forming. Don't worry, I'll get back to these tags and explaining what they do in a bit. And then we also have body and then closing tags. And finally, here in the head, we have something called a title tag. Okay, so this over here is the rule that every single HTML file must follow. To just looking at this right now without knowing any HTML, you can get an idea of what everything means. So HTML, we're defining that this is an HTML. We're saying that this is the head of the HTML with the title. And we're saying that this is the body of the HTML. So let's try something here. Let's save this file. And we're going to save it, let's do desktop. And we're going to call it index.html. You can see that it's already completed the HTML syntax for us. Save. And we have an index.html file here. Let's drag this all the way down to our Google Chrome and open it up. And well, nothing happens. But let's add a bit of text to it. So in the title, I'm going to say, my first website, exclamation mark. And then in the body, I'm just going to put hello there. Okay, so if I save this And just to show you from now on, I'm going to be doing Command S to save, just because it'll be faster. And now, if I refresh this page, I have hello there. And you can see the power over here of what we just did. We have hello there as the text, which is in the body. And then we also have my first website as the title. And you can see over here in the file that we're referencing index.html on my desktop. We can see here that we have HTML, we have the head, which we haven't really talked about yet, but we see that the title is in the head, kind of like a header. And then we have the body, which by looking at this, we can assume that it's whatever shows up onto the web page. Before we expand on this and make it a little bit, well, prettier, because now it's just simple text, I want to reiterate the fact that what we've just done is very similar to what a server does. If we go back to our mockups here, you remember that when we enter google.com, the servers send us an HTML file back. When we move the index.html file all the way down to Google Chrome, that's what we just did. We mimicked a server and we gave it to the browser to load up the HTML file. And because browsers are built to know what HTML files are, it can read the syntax and say, okay, yeah, this is an HTML. Okay, you want my title to be my first website, and you want my body to say hello there. That's perfect. These are the default HTML rules that you'll see all the time. It is a little bit confusing at first, but this is it. You just have to remember that there is a tag, so an HTML tag, a head tag, a title tag, a body tag, and these tags usually have an opening and a closing. There's some exception to this rule, and we'll get into that a little bit later on in the videos, but just remember this for now. So I want you to try creating your very first website and seeing how it works. And once you're done with that, I want to show you that Sublime Text actually has a nice shortcut, so you don't have to keep writing those tags over and over. So the way you do that is you type in HTML and then press the tab key, and it loads all this up for you. Okay, so now that we've done this, I want you to go off and create your very first website. I know it's very, very simple. You can put whatever you want in the title, and you can put whatever you want in the body. And in the next video, we're going to start expanding on our first website. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. And welcome back. In the previous video, we went over the basic rules that all HTML files must follow. And I kind of glossed over this doc type HTML tag. And I did that on purpose because I want you to develop another developer fundamental concept. And that is the fact that most of the time, as developers, there's so much information out there, there's no way that you can keep all of that in your head. And as developers, we must get really, really good at problem solving. So for the doc type, let's say if I was working and somebody gives me this file and I say, okay, I got this, that's good, but I'm not sure what doc type is. Well, again, we want to get really good at Googling here. And I know it sounds silly, but trust me, as a developer, you're going to be Googling a lot and going to get really, really good at looking for answers and understanding meanings behind code. So if I go into doc type HTML and we Google that, one of the first things we get is the EE3 School. And this is a resource that I highly, highly recommend. It will actually explain what the doc type is and even show you a demo of what it does. You can read into this and get more familiar with it, but the general rule and the concept behind doc type is that doc type says to the browser, hey, just a heads up, this file is going to use HTML5. And we'll get into what HTML5 is, but right now HTML has evolved from back in the day when Tim Berners-Lee invented it to where it is now, and it has developed and evolved so that it has a few more tags, it has a few more features, and this is the way for us to say, hey, browser, we're going to be using HTML5, so please make sure that you load the website properly. And we'll get into what those new tags are and some of the new syntax is. But again, Most likely in your day-to-day job, you're going to be writing this at the top because we're writing in HTML5. If that ever changes and something new comes along, we might change this, but doc type, that's what it is. But the key concept here is that I really want you to start Googling. And anytime you see in my videos something that you don't fully understand or you want to dig a little bit deeper, you really want to grow those roots of your foundation so that you really understand how the landscape works. Okay, so from there, I just wanted to get that concept across that as a developer, you really want to understand how things work and what they mean. And you'll come across in your day-to-day many things that it's very easy to just on the surface copy and paste or just look at an example and do it without fully understanding what it does. But the developers that get really, really good salaries, really good jobs, and are considered senior developers are the ones that fully understand all the meaning behind the things that they do. We're going to be taking that throughout the course and making sure that we develop those fundamentals. But anytime, like I said, you have any questions or you don't understand something fully, I do encourage you to Google and get the answers because there's a ton of free resources out there for you to get fully comfortable with a topic. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Welcome back. In this video, we're going to expand on our knowledge and introduce you to a few more HTML tags and make this website look a little bit prettier than just hello there. To get started, I'm just going to move the screens around so you can see better. All right, so we have the left and right. And again, just to make sure everything works, if I change anything here to boo, and then I click save, and then I refresh the page, I have everything updating. Perfect. Now, these aren't the only HTML tags that you'll encounter. There's actually a ton of them. And if you go back to the w3schools.com, you'll see over here all the HTML tags that exist. There's a lot of them. We're only going to be going through, I would say maybe 10 or 15 or so, because those are the only ones that, well, technically that I've used in many years of development. There's a few things on here that I've never even heard of, I've never used. You can always look these up and learn them yourself, but I'll say that there's about 10 or 15 tags that are used 99% of the time, and those are the ones that you'll encounter. So we'll go through some of those most popular ones. And HTML doesn't really get any harder than this. This is the syntax. As long as you get used to these little signs and structure, you're pretty much a HTML developer. So the first tag that I want to introduce you to is the h1 tag. So the way that I have it here is actually not right. You want to make sure that everything is surrounded by a tag. So a web browser right now can see boo and just print out boo. But if you want to do it right, you'd want to put something like an h1. And an h1 tag, if I save this and I refresh, we get what we call a header. So that is a header and then 1. What does 1 mean? Well, it actually goes all the way up to 6. So if I change this to 2, and I'm not going to do every single one. Let's just do another one. H6, boo, H6. And if I save this and refresh the page, you can see that there's different sizes in the text. So that's the header tag. And again, if I scroll through the W3 schools and I go to the H, you see over here that there's the header tags explained here. And this website is really, really cool because you can actually click on try it yourself and you can play around with different things. Click run and it changes it for you. So again, this is a really, really good website for you to get familiar with all the tags. But again, we're going to stick to our website for now. Another thing that I want to introduce you to is something called a p tag or a paragraph tag. A paragraph tag lets you have paragraphs. So now if I refresh, well, there's not much different from what we had before, which was no tags and just saving it. Refresh. But you can see the difference when I copy and paste this and have a few paragraphs versus this. Let's see what happens. So I save this. You'll see over here that with Sublime Text, after, I don't know, I want to say about maybe like 20 saves, it'll ask you to make a purchase because technically this is an unregistered one. You can ignore it for now, just click cancel. Again, it's just one annoying thing that will pop up every now and then. I actually have a registered Sublime Text. I just wanted to show you this error so you're not surprised when you see it. Use Sublime Text for as long as you need it for free. When you start getting into the developer role and working full-time with it, I do recommend that you make a purchase. It's a great program, and you still get everything through the unregistered. You just have this pop-up that shows up after a few saves. But anyway, from now on, I'm going to be using a registered Sublime account. I just wanted to show you that error. If I refresh the page here, you'll see that I have the paragraphs show up nicely, but these unstructured pieces of text, well, everything's kind of in line, and HTML doesn't really know what to do with it, so it puts everything on one line. I also want to show you one other quick trick in Sublime Text. So writing this gibberish is not very exciting and kind of takes a bit of time, and developers are lazy. We want to make sure that everything is done fast and efficient. So if you actually put lorem here and then press tab, you'll get lorem ipsum paragraphs. So let's do that. I'm going to delete that, lorem, tab, and then one more, lorem, tab. Perfect. Let's save that and refresh, and we have nice paragraphs. As you can see, we have some tags and what we call nested tags. So you can see that the body is the parent, and Sublime Text actually lets you close and open these. So you have the body tag, you have the header tags, which are children of the body tag, and then we have p tags. A lot of people get confused in the naming. I've mentioned these as tags, so essentially anything that has this syntax is a tag, but this is called an H1 element. So that's when it's an entire block of functionality with content inside it. So again, tags, and then this is an H1 element. Again, it's just naming, but you'll hear tags and elements kind of used interchangeably, but those are the specific differences. All right, let's get into some of the more exciting things. Let's say, for example, I really want to emphasize lorem ipsum here. Well, I can use another tag, b tag, and then we close it at lorem ipsum. And let's make the screen here a little bit bigger just so you can see. There you go. So we have the b tags over here, and if I click save, I refresh. Oops, no, we don't want to translate this page. We see that this is now bolded. Again, let's make it a little bit bigger. There you go. Now, this syntax is actually not used anymore, or it's not recommended. Obviously, it still works. But there was a problem that HTML was initially used for websites that ran on computers, on PCs, on Macs, and now we have things such as mobile phones and iPad. Although the bolded text, and we actually have another one which was the italicized I. Although we had this, for most phones, some of them didn't have ability to bold the text and didn't have the ability to italicize. Or some screen readers, which people who are visually impaired use, didn't really understand the meaning behind italicize and bold. So now we use something called strong for bolded, and refresh. And then for italicized, we use EM for emphasis. And there you go. Now, the reason this change was made was a move towards more something called semantic HTML, and we'll get into that into a later lesson. But just know that there's some tags that have evolved over the years, and It's part of why HTML5 exists. We'll get into that a little bit more, but just wanted to give you a quick note on that. All right, I think that's enough for now. We're going to get into more tags in the next video. For now, play around, and I'll see you in the next one. And welcome back. In the previous video, we talked about a few of the common tags that HTML uses. We're going to expand on that knowledge and learn a few more. So I'm going to delete these. And I'm going to teach you about something called a ordered list. So an OL tag. And within this tag, we have list items. Banana. And another list item. Do apple. And lastly, let's do orange. So if I save this, again, I refresh, and we have banana, apple, orange. So you can see here, this is how you make lists. And this is an ordered list. So you can see we have 1, 2, 3. If we want to make it without the numbers, we use something called an unordered list. And again, I save that and refresh, and we have these. Now there's also subfields that you can use. So again, this is all about nesting and having parent tags and children tags. So let's say within apples, we wanted to have, let me structure that a little bit cleaner. There you go. Within apples, we also want to emphasize that there is the Fuji apple and there is Honey Crisp. And well, I can't think of a third type of apple, so I'm just going to delete that. If I save this and refresh, well, we have a nested list. There you have it. We have your list items. I'll see you in the next video where we're going to learn about putting images into our website and self-closing tags. See you in the next one. And welcome back. In this video, we're going to be learning about self-closing tags. Up until this point, we've used HTML tags that have the opening and then the closing, which has this slash in it. Now, there are a few elements that don't have this syntax, but they have something called self-closing tags. So let's say here between Fuji and Honey Crisp, I want to have a bit of a line break. I can use something like BR here, break. And if I save this and I refresh, we have a little line break. There's also HR, which is horizontal. So you get a horizontal line, if I refresh, right through here. HR, break, just have one single element, self-closing. You might also see something like this, and that is something from the old version of HTML, which uses XHTML. You can read up more about it on your own, but just keep in mind that with HTML5, we're just going to be using this. So obviously on web pages, there's going to be images. So would it be nice if there was a picture of a Fuji apple here? Let's see how we can do it. So with an image tag, and let's think about this critically. If I didn't know what an image tag is and I wanted to add an image to my HTML file, well, if I Google image HTML tag, again, one of the first websites that pops up is the W3 Schools. And it'll show you exactly how an image tag works. If I click try yourself, you can see it in action. You can play around with it. But you can see here that an image tag is a self-closing tag. There's no closing image tag, just one single tag. And if I do image, and we have something called source here. And this is something called an attribute. Some HTML tags can have something called attributes, which is add special properties to the specific tag. So an attribute always has a value attached to it. And the image source, that's what SRC stands for, tells us where the image is coming from. So let's find an image of Fuji apple. Let's go images. Ooh, I like this one. Let's do view image, and it'll give us the link of where this image is. So I'm just going to copy that, paste it in here. Let's go back to our example here. We can see here that there's a few more attributes. that we can add to an image tag. But for now, we can just leave it here. Close the tag. You can see that Sublime text adds the nice highlighting for us. And if I save this, go back to our website, and I click refresh, I get this massive Fuji apple. And obviously that's too big. Ideally, we can make it a little bit smaller. Again, if we go back into the example, you'll see that it has width and height. So we can actually just copy that and add it to the attributes so that we specify the width, and this is in pixels. So I save that, I refresh, and look at that, we have the Fuji apple. It looks very, very pretty. Let's add the picture for Honeycrisp as well. I'm going to do this fast. You should be able to just copy this image. And again, we want to make it the same size as the previous one, so I'm going to leave the width and height the same. And let's find an image of a Honeycrisp apple. So Honeycrisp apple images. Well, it looks quite similar, doesn't it? And view image. Let's copy the source from here. I'm going to save that. Go back to our website and let's refresh. And look at that. We have our apples. So image tags are very, very useful. You might be asking yourself, what is the alt attribute mean? And this is something that you can actually read up on. So if you scroll down, if you look over here, you can see that alt specifies an alternate text for an image. So again, this is something that can be used by screen readers, and you can define what the image is of. So in here, the alt is smiley face. So that when a screen reader reads it, says, oh, in this part of the website, there is a smiley face. Just to recap, we learned about self-closing tags, which don't require two of them. So an opening and a closing tag, just a single one. So we used BR for line break. We used HR for a horizontal line. And then we have the image tag that also has to have some attributes. So it has a source, which tells us where to grab the image from. It has a width attribute, a height attribute with a value of 42 pixels and 42. All right, I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye-bye. And welcome back. In the previous videos, we talked about some of the most common HTML tags and how the HTML document is read by the browser. However, we've missed one critical feature of HTML. And if we go back to our diagram here that we should remember from the first section, the HTML file gets sent to us, but the power of HTML is in its ability to link to other documents. So if I go back here to our website, it's a simple one-page website, but I can't really click on Fuji or Apple or banana. It doesn't link to anything. There must be an HTML tag that we can use for that, right? Well, yes, there is. It's called an anchor tag. So an anchor tag is very easy, just an A. And this anchor tag has something called an href, which is an attribute, and it's the hypertext reference. So in this href, you'll be able to link to something. So let's close this A tag. It has an opening and a closing tag. And if I save this and refresh the page, well, nothing happens because you need something in the anchor tag. So let's do new page. I save that, I refresh, and we have new page here. Now if I click this, nothing happens. So you can see that it has the link and the mouse changes images, so it's clickable, but nothing happens. Well, that's because we need to specify where we want the link to go. Now let's think about this. If we want to link to a new page, we don't really have another new page. If you remember in our desktop over here, let me close some of these. We only have index.html. Wouldn't it be great if there was another file that we can link to? Well, let's create another file. So let's open up Sublime Text actually. I'm going to say File, New File. I'm going to save this as index2. Actually, let's just name it New Page. And we're going to save it to desktop. And see over here how when I went to Sublime Text, it's now a plain text. I need to make sure that this is an HTML file, so I can just do .html, save, and Sublime Text automatically adjusts to the HTML. So again, I can type in that short command, HTML and tab that comes with Sublime Text. And let's do the title, new page, and the body. We can just do a header that says, this is the new page. If I save this, great. We have a new page. And if I go to my desktop here, you see that I have new page and index.html. So how do we link these two together? Well, it's very simple. We open up Sublime again, and within index.html, the href can now say we're linking to new page.html. Let's save that and let's give it a try. Refresh the page, click, and this is a new page. Awesome, but to go back, we have to press the back symbol. So let's link back to the original file. Again, we can do this by, let's do a p tag, which is for paragraph. I'm going to say go back. Close that tag. But hold on a minute. I need an anchor tag, right? If I just save this and refresh the page, I say go back. But what if you really, really want this to be a paragraph? Or let's say you want this to be an H2, but you also want it to be an anchor tag. Well, that's very simple. You just wrap it in an anchor tag. And just so it's nice and clear, we're going to have the nice spacing here. And again, an anchor tag must have an href, which tells us where to go. And we want to go to index.html. So index.html, save, and refresh. Let's go back. Let's go to the next one and back. So this is the power that comes with HTML, this ability to link to other pages. And yeah, we can have text, we can have lists, we can have images, but the true power is in this linking ability. In the next episode, we're going to expand on this. I'll see you in that one. Bye-bye. And welcome to the student Q&A section. As students take this course, usually I get a bunch of questions. Some of them are really, really good. Some of them I get often. And we're going to use these Q&A sections for me to make a reply video to answer some of those really, really good questions. And the first one we're going to tackle for this video is index.html. If we go back to our example that we had, you've noticed that I've always used index.html as the first page, and then we created a new page.html. Now you might be asking yourself, why index.html? Why not home.html or apples.html? And you could actually do that, but I can explain this really well by looking at this diagram. Most of the time, there are more than a few HTML files. You saw that with our example, we had our index.html and also new page.html. But when we make that request to, let's say, google.com, how does the server know which HTML to return first for the homepage? And you could go into the server and configure it and tell it, you know what, I want about.html to be the first page. But by default, most servers just say, I'll return index.html. If I see index.html in the servers, I'll just return that. So this is just a common practice that you'll see in a lot of the projects at a lot of the websites that you'll work with, is that index.html is usually, you can think of it as the homepage, the first HTML file that the server returns. And if anybody in the index.html clicks on a link, then it will return whichever link they return. So that would be, let's say they click on about anchor tag, then they'll get about.html. So that's it. That is your answer to your question. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. And we got another Q&A video for you. And this one is going to be talking about something that you may have seen yourself while following along these videos, and that is the fact that this file over here is different than, let's say, if you go to a website and you see HTTPS. What does that mean? If you go into our example, you also saw here that we have an anchor tag that references newpage.html. It has nothing like file or HTTP in front of it. And then you also saw that the images here are referencing some sort of a website that links to a picture. So what's the difference here? The difference here is that the first is using the file protocol. And that means that this web page, I can't really access it outside of my computer. This is using something called a relative path. If I go into my index.html, I am saying to link to newpage.html relative to where index.html is. So if we go to our desktop, you see that index.html lives in the same directory, which is the desktop, as newpage. So I can reference it through here. If I created a new folder, let's say test, I would have to reference it this way. So let's check here. If I save this and go into the web page, refresh and click new page, I'll get your file was not found. But now if I go into my desktop and create test and I put the new page in here, and let's bring back everything, refresh, and click on new page. This is now working. And you can see over here that I'm accessing it through desktop test newpage.html. So that's called a relative path. So relative to where index.html page is, I am saying index.html, I want you to access from test new page HTML. If you look at the images, you'll see that we have something different. We're accessing the image through HTTP, which we'll get into later videos when we talk about servers, but this is how we access files over the internet. If I wanted this anchor tag, this new page, to actually link to something, maybe another website, maybe to this hilarious GIF, well, I can copy this link, open up my Sublime Text, and now I can just copy this with the HTTPS protocol. And now this is an absolute link. No matter where I reference this, if I put it into newpage.html or index.html, no matter what, this link will get me to this GIF. So let's test that out. I save this, I refresh, and I click on new page, and look at that. We have the GIF. All right. Hopefully that answers your question. We'll get into HTTP and HTTPS later on in the course. But for now, keep that in mind that there's absolute path and then there is relative path. I'm going to fix that so we have it back for the next video. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.